Good evening, everyone. This is the February 22nd meeting of 2024 meeting of the Needham Conservation Commission. I'm Dave Harrer, Conservation Commission Chair. Before we get started, I'm going to confirm that the commission members and staff are present. When I call your name, please respond. Sue's not here. Reed?
Here.
Fred?
Here.
Allison?
Here.
Paulina? Not here yet. And the chair is here. And Deb?
Here.
And Clay?
Here.
Okay. This open meeting of the Town of Needham Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Healy's March 2023 extension of the open meeting law, temporary provisions. All supporting materials have been provided to members of the commission and are available on the Conservation Commission website. Let me go over a few ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each hearing on the agenda and introduce the applicant and/or their consultant to begin their project presentation. After conclusion of the applicant's presentation, I will call on each commission member to provide their comments or questions. Please hold until your name is called. After comments and questions from the commission members, I'll solicit questions and comments from the staff and then from the public. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. Please state your name before speaking. And finally, each vote taken during this meeting will be conducted via roll call. And I just noted that Paulina had logged on. So the first item on the agenda is our minutes. And I think we have 4 minutes.
So the minutes of January 11th were repeat. And then the other minutes included February 8th, 2024, and then 2 backlog minutes, February 11th, 2021, and February 25th of 2021. Sue provided no comments. She was good with them.
All right, that's good. If there's no other comments from the commission members, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of 2/11/2021, 1/11/2024, 2/8/2024, and 2/25/2021.
Motion to accept.
Okay,
Second.
let's vote. Reed?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Paulina?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, Clay, are there any enforcement or violation updates?
Sorry, do you have anything, Clay?
Nope.
Okay, so we have Fernando Delfior. He's the owner and contractor for a project at 40 Lake Drive. So there are some issues going on over there, so I did invite him to attend tonight to discuss. I did tell him that, you know, he may end up being at the end of the meeting, so I don't know if you want to get into that now or hold off.
Do you think it'll be a lengthy discussion?
Not too bad.
Yeah, why don't we hold off?
Okay.
That's okay. All right, so
We'll get back to you, Fernando.
Okay, thanks, Debbie.
Okay.
the next item on the agenda is Walker Pond, 0 Charles River Street. So let's open the hearing. It's a DEP file 234-923. It was a while ago at the town and its consultant made a presentation to us, giving us some general background of what they were thinking, and now they submitted the notice of intent. And we have Tom Ryder from the town and some consultants from Beta. I don't know who wants to speak first. Melissa or Tom?
I'll let Beta get right into it. So Laura Kraus and Melissa Ricos, Justin Saviano's here with us too. So I'll just open up the floor.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. For the record, as Tom said, Laura Kraus with Beta Group. Melissa Ricos is also here. I'm the lead scientist on the project and have been working through the permitting, and Melissa serves as the project manager and the engineer on the project. I will share my screen and pull up presentation. Can you all see my screen? Fantastic, thank you.
That's good.
All right, so we're very excited to be presenting the project and having submitted the notice of intent to you tonight. So thank you for having us. So just a brief outline of what we're going to talk about, some project background, the existing conditions and the resource area delineations that we have out there, the 4 kind of project elements or focuses of the project, the inlet relocation off of Walker Lane, the outlet control structure replacement, some BMP and stormwater infrastructure work at Walker Gordon Field, and then the Walker Pond Management Plan itself with all of the water quality improvements that we're intending to implement, and then the mitigation measures. Existing conditions. So as you can see from this aerial, there is extensive vegetative growth within Walker Pond. This project is intended to kind of address that through 4 elements, some improvements at Walker Gordon Field on the upper portion of the screen, on the lower portion of the screen, providing a sediment trap and relocation of an outfall off of Walker Lane, and then reconstruction of the outlet control structure to better manage the water as it moves out of the system here. So eutrophication within Walker Pond has led to extensive nuisance and invasive vegetation through the pond. There's also a large amount of, or there was previously a large amount of nutrients inflowing into the pond. This project and other projects that the town has taken on have been intended to address some of the nutrient loading up watershed of the project location. And this project is more focused specifically at the pond itself. Here we're trying to slow the process of eutrophication through restoring the water depth and then addressing some of the water quality issues. And to do that, planning to treat the pond with an herbicide this first year at a minimum, and then spot treat as needed as needed to determine as we determine over the next couple of years through our monitoring program. We'll also conduct hand removal of invasive vegetation. We'll replace the control structure and do the other improvements that I will get more into depth on in a minute. Just a brief showing that we did get our file number and DEP has not issued comments as of today. From a resource area delineation perspective, the boundaries were confirmed previously during the RDA process, but just to kind of go back over those, at the outlet control structure, the banks of Walker Pond are relatively steep, very well defined, and there is no BVW at the outlet control structure. At the outlet from Walker Lane, the bank boundary is a little bit more shallow, but there still is no BVW up gradient of the bank boundary. And then on the north side towards the Walker Gordon Field, we do have some wetland, bordering vegetated wetland off of the bank there. So that was delineated in a couple of locations where there may have needed to be some physical work, but we actually don't have any wetland impacts, which I will get into. Also just want to point out that there is no floodplain mapped by FEMA on the site. So our resource areas that we're dealing with are BVW, land underwater, and bank. And just again, this is another image of a different time where you can still see extensive vegetative growth within the pond. So a little bit about the outfall relocation. So kind of to get the project going in this location, we'll place the erosion controls at the limit of the outlet control, the existing structure. Regrade, pull back the structure, place a new head wall. Sorry, where's my cursor? New head wall in this location, and then we'll have this sediment trap and dissipator pad at the discharge point. That'll provide some additional attenuation of the flow that's coming from Walker Lane, and it will prevent additional scour at the bank. So this is a benefit to remove some of that, or to prevent some additional scour at the bank there. This work will result in 10 linear feet of bank impact, and that's only temporary to provide enough room for the contractor to work there, grade out appropriately, and install their erosion controls. Once the project's done, they'll stabilize the area, native seed, and then remove the erosion controls once sufficient stabilization is achieved. The outlet control structures, this is a little bit more complicated here. This photo on the upper left is the existing outlet control structure. It's not in great shape right now, and that's why we're replacing it. You can see a board right here, and that's currently what's serving to regulate the water level right now. The proposed outlet control structure will be located essentially in the same location, and to construct it will also be providing a new drainage manhole in Central Ave here. And that will allow us to either, if we need to during construction, we can bypass into the pipe kind of beyond the limit of work. And it'll also kind of provide this section of the outlet control structure as its own kind of piece of the system. Will provide better maintenance over the long term. You can see in the lower right-hand side here, those are our impact takeoffs. The new outlet control structure, because it's intended to handle the water here and is supposed to be in the same location, it's actually slightly into the pond. That's the only configuration that works for this particular structure. So will result in 14 permanent square feet of land under water impacts and 11 linear feet of permanent bank impacts where the new structure will go. And then outside of that, temporary impacts will result from installation of sheeting that will be placed around where the outlet control structure will be placed. That sheeting will also serve as the water control structure. They'll pump the water from there so that the work area can be dry, and then they'll install the new structure. At the end, they'll remove the temporary water control structure and restore the land underwater and bank in those locations. It's another view of the outlet control structure looking into the pond, and a couple of additional views of the system here. So this is a profile. So this is the outlet control structure on the right side. Water will flow in. There's an access manhole on the back side of the outlet control structure, the new pipe, and into the new manhole. This is another picture of the impacts, but we've already discussed that. So I will move on to another exciting portion of the project. So this was not part of the project as discussed back in December. So this is a little bit new. So these improvements, there's kind of three things happening here. The first is that we'll be collecting and treating stormwater from Charles River Street in a subsurface infiltration system under the existing parking lot. So this will prevent, or will provide some additional treatment from the roadway runoff, where right now it's running off the road through catch basins directly to an outfall. So now that we're going to actually get some treatment there. Also, we're proposing a perimeter trail along the north side of Walker Pond, along the limit of the down gradient limit of the fields. This trail is also going to serve as a perimeter infiltration trench, and it will have check dams every 100 feet to ensure that the water in the trench will actually infiltrate and won't kind of just follow along the trail and make its way to a low point. So it'll actually infiltrate within the system there. This is a really exciting aspect because nutrient loading from the field will actually be nutrient loading to the pond from the field will be minimized because water will be treated through the infiltration trench, and then also treated if it does end up overflowing will be treated through the additional vegetation being proposed through the restoration of the buffer zone on the down gradient side of the trench. Those areas will be seeded with a native wildflower mix, and then areas that are currently maintained as lawn that are actually wetlands, those areas will be seeded with a wetland seed mix and restored to wetlands. So now I'll get into the pond management. I know that this was discussed in December, but right now, the first year, we're really looking to treat the aquatic nuisance vegetation, some hand pulling of invasive species management. We'll replace the outlet control structure this year, and then we'll install Utrisorb filters at the inlets to provide some additional phosphorus mitigation. Year 2, we'll be providing spot treatment with herbicides, and then we're going to be working on designing an aeration system at that point. And then year 3, continue to control weeds if necessary, install the aeration, and evaluate whether or not some additional sediment might need to be managed down the line. And all of this will be carefully thought through every year with extensive with water quality monitoring and vegetation monitoring to ensure that we know what's going on. We don't just want to be blanket, using herbicides all the time when it's not necessary. So included in the notice of intent was an alternatives analysis where we looked at several different types of chemical treatments, different ways to treat the pond with physical means, to address the water quality issue. And one thing that we did want to point out, as requested by the commission, was, well, what happens if we just do nothing here, right? What happens if we just let it kind of become a wetland? That is a natural process, but in this location, the watershed to Walker Pond is extensive, and it almost functions as part of the town's stormwater system. So by allowing sediment accumulation, we're actually losing some of that important flood storage that's currently provided by Walker Pond. So that's something that we did want to discuss. And then we're also, Walker Pond is, I think, the seventh or sixth largest pond in the town, and it does provide some important wildlife habitat that only open water can provide. So those are kind of the things that we're trying to maintain as part of this project. Vegetation control, I mentioned, we'll be using Floridone and hand pulling invasives. That'll include water chestnuts and purple loosestrife. And then water quality improvements. I mentioned aeration in year 2. We're going to be looking to design that. That's something that it's not actually, we're looking for approval right now because there's going to be some additional work. It's going to involve placement of things physically in the pond. But that's something that we want on your radar. Right now, we can't actually implement one because the correct application would require a surficial aeration system, and that will get kind of gummed up with all the vegetation that's there now. So in order to implement that, we need to kind of knock back the vegetation before we can do that. And then lastly, there's a couple more things. The Utrisorb filters I already mentioned at the inlets to control phosphorus, and implementing the BMPs at Walker Gordon Field to reduce nitrogen and phosphorus to the pond as well. This was included in the in our pond management plan as an attachment to the notice of intent, but it's a general distribution of what has been observed out there to date. Extensive, as you can tell, vegetation throughout the pond. And then from a mitigation and avoidance standpoint, the outlet control structure work, as I discussed, will be conducted behind, sheeting, cofferdams. That will minimize turbidity increases in the water, which is something we want to prevent. We'll restore temporary land underwater and bank impacts with regrading and seeding on the banks, and then reestablishing a native substrate in the land underwater before we raise the water back up to its intended level. Portions of the buffer zone at Walker Gordon Field, as I discussed, will be restored with native seed mixes. There are 4 trees being removed, 3 scarlet oaks and 1 white ash at the outlet control structure. And those can be replaced. We take the commission's suggestion on what species they'd like to see. And then invasive species removal, which I had already mentioned. So really exciting project. The next steps here are preparing the 404 pre-construction notification submission to Army Corps. That submission is required solely for the outlet control structure. We do have a boring that we have to advance upgradient of the bank for the so that the contractor can actually design the sheeting, because they need to know how deep they need to get to actually properly control the water. Well, that's an element that is it's not included in this notice of intent. It is exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act. We just wanted to bring it to your attention, and we will send you a letter before we do the work, but wanted you to know that that's coming up. The intent is to treat with the herbicide in early to mid-spring, the outlet control structure and the Walker Lane outfall. Those will be bid in early summer with construction in late summer of this year. And then the additional work at Walker Gordon Field may kind of occur outside of that timeline. So that's how we're seeing the project going in the next steps. And we're now available to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Laura. It was a very nice presentation. I will now ask the commission members for any comments or questions. Start with Reed.
Yeah, nothing from me right now.
All right, Fred.
No questions.
Allison.
So I have a couple. In the beginning, this is a great improvement, and I really like the field improvements, by the way, the catching some of the chemicals before they go in the pond with the path and things like that. And obviously the replacement of the structure, which we knew about would happen anyways. In the beginning of your presentation, you talk about there's a line that says that you're going to the plan is to restore the water depth. That is actually written down in one of the early slides. And then in a later slide, there's a dredging impact of 500 cubic feet. But then I didn't see anywhere else where anything could possibly be interpreted as improving the water depth. What is that? Is that dredging just to put in the new structure? What is that?
So I'll answer the dredging question. So the dredging volume, that's only for the outlet control structure. So you're correct. There's no actual dredging throughout the pond to restore the water column. The idea is to restore the depth of water by removing the vegetative material. So you actually have more water column depth. We're not actually dredging any of the material in the water.
Okay, that was a little unclear.
Understood. Thank you.
Because it literally says you plan to restore the water depth, not the water column. So it's a little unclear. And the other thing is you don't have a time frame of when you're going to do the field improvements. And do you have any guess? Like, would it be 2025, 26? Like, when do you think you might do that? Do you need funding? Why isn't it part of this?
Excuse me, maybe I should answer that. So it will be depending on funding. So we're going to be putting this out to bid. We'll see where the bids come out, and then we'll see if we have grant opportunities.
Yeah.
To finish up that construction piece.
Okay, because I mean, from my point of view, I think it's really important as part of this project to have that, even if you can't do it in the initial project, but just not forget about it, you know. I guess that in terms of the 3 scarlet oaks and the 1 ash, do you know how the size of the trees that are being removed?
Question. Let me pull up the plans. Don't know if we have sizes of those. Yes. Okay. So the scarlet oaks, there's a 14-inch, 16-inch, and 20-inch, and the white ash is a 16-inch.
Okay, so they're substantial trees. So there is a list of species. None of those are all upland trees. So, you know, maybe they're, you know, they don't have wet feet for whatever reason. And so, you know, there are some upland trees on the plant list and on the Concom. And so you can choose from that. I mean, certainly oaks, you know, pin or red or whatever. I mean, scarlet oaks are really nice, really hard to buy and transplant. I wouldn't suggest trying to replace scarlet oaks, even though I love them. And the ash, I wouldn't replace an ash because they get diseases. So, but it's right, we have a list and you can, you know, suggest that, and as long as it's on the list. And I think it's is it 2-to-1? Dave and Deb? 2-to-1, even though
2-to-1.
they're, yeah, and it's 2.5, I think, inch. So
2.5
you have to find
kilograms.
where to put them. You know, that you don't have to put them exactly where you're cutting down the trees. If there's a place where, a little bit more in the open where it would be better, and, you know, that can be done. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good presentation.
Okay, Paulina? Any thoughts?
I don't have any comments.
All right, yeah, like I said, I thought it was a great presentation. I just had one question relating to your parking lots stormwater system. Did you evaluate the soils underneath the parking lot? Are they suitable for such a large infiltration gallery?
I can answer that. We did look at the soils. We didn't do test pits, but we did look at the soils data in the area. And they are AB soils, and they are suitable for infiltration. So we did factor that in.
What about the groundwater level?
The groundwater, so we'll have to look at that when the system goes in, and we'll monitor that and make sure that we have separation during construction. And modify as necessary. But like I said, we didn't actually do test pits. It is a steep bank, as Laura was saying, from the pond. So we feel pretty comfortable that at the elevation of where the finished grade of the parking lot is, we'll have sufficient elevation and separation from the groundwater, which is typically, you know, at the pond level.
All right, Clay or Deb, I don't know which one of you have studied this, but do you have any comments?
No, I agree. It was a great presentation, and I know a lot of thought has gone into this project.
Okay, Clay, is there anybody in the audience that has their hand up or present?
There is one hand. I can move them over. Just a moment.
You have a camera?
Yes.
Hi, hi, Peter and Barbara Hauschka were at 105 Walker Lane, facing the pond. I have a couple of questions. It's a great presentation and a large project, obviously. One question is regarding the runoff from Charles River Street, which I think your parking lot and trenching on the ball field side of the pond is addressing. Is that right? I wasn't clear.
That's correct. It's going to collect from the existing catch basins, and we're going to put 2 new catch basins in at the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
And intersect everything that comes down Charles
Right.
River. Yep.
So does that include what's coming down from the South Street direction of Charles River? Because there's during heavy rains, there's a 4-inch deep current running right into the inlet from that direction. It's not just water coming down from Central Avenue. So I don't know where the catch basins are, but does it include both directions? Because if not, it's not going to catch all the water.
No, it won't catch all the water from both directions, but the purpose of this and the sizing for this is to catch the smaller storms and the first flush of the storms to treat the storm water. It's not sized to mitigate flooding.
No, but I'm just wondering, I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's an equal amount of water coming from South Street direction as there is from Central Avenue. And
Mhm.
I've got videos of the amount that's floods down from South Street, and it's rather impressive during a storm. So I just thought if you're going to catch the inlet water and try to remove phosphorus from it with your absorbents and so forth, it would be wise to try to do it from both directions
Mhm.
rather than just getting half.
Right. Yeah, we're continuing to work with the town throughout the whole watershed to install additional BMPs, and we can look at the other side of the street as part of that, but I think we maxed out the size of the system that could fit under the parking lot and within the parameters of this project.
Yeah.
To get what we could. We tried to fit in as much as we could, under this project. But we'll definitely consider that for future projects.
Okay, thank you. And one other question relating to the capability of the new outlet structure that's being designed to deliberately regulate water depth in the pond. As it is now, when the outlet structure wooden planks rotted out last April, the pond dropped 2.5 to 3 feet almost overnight. And then when the structure that's there now was put in, it's actually caused flooding of the trees along most of the shoreline of Walker Lane, the part that comes out to Central Avenue. So a lot of these oaks and other trees have been had up to a foot or more of water against their trunk since last July or whenever that structure was put in, because it
Mhm.
doesn't have any kind of a gate to regulate pond level. And right now it's way too high. And most trees during the growing season, upland trees especially, can survive about 1 to 4 months in the growing season with flooded soil around them. And so it's important to have the water level regulatable so that you don't have trees dying all along the shoreline.
Mhm.
And as another note, when you can lower the water, it may be advantageous for treating the invasive weeds and then fill it back up again, because most of the smartweed, for instance, is submerged, and if there's treatment just from the surface, a lot of the weed will not be susceptible to the treatment.
Mhm.
So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I will point out that the structure is being designed with a gate. It's metal, so it won't rot out, and it has a wheel, and it can vary. I think we have it at 1.5 to 2 feet. And on the design plans, we have it set to a historical elevation, so we're not using the current pond elevation. We looked at a bunch of survey plans we had from different projects when they put in the sewer on Walker Lane, when they did the original Gordon Field. We looked at water levels from those surveys, and we're going to propose to set the weir at that height, but it will be able to be manipulated up and down from there in the future by the town with the gate pretty easily.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question too. The smartweed that seems to be propagating outside or on the field side of the pond is taking up a lot of space, and if I was under the impression that was considered an invasive species, but you seem to have it down under native species. So just how are you going to address all that smartweed? Will that go away?
It will be treated with the Floridone, yes.
Okay, and you expect that to be pretty successful on it?
Yeah, the Floridone is selective, but the species that it really won't specifically target are other aquatic species like Arum and more beneficial species. So it should target that species.
Okay, great. Because that's awful.
All right, Clay, any other member of the public out there with a question?
I don't see any other raised hands in the audience. Do note that Fred has a raised hand, and I believe Allison also has.
I see that. So yeah, Fred, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, in a recent, another recent project that we reviewed for a pond, they traced part of the overgrowth problem to excessive fertilizer nutrient runoff from the adjacent properties. And there were some, there was discussion about how to reduce that. I'm wondering if that's an element of this project at all, whether are there fertilizers from the ball field that we're going to try to reduce or mitigate somehow?
So the ball field was definitely one of our concerns in why we added that trench and filter strip to try and address that. We are working with the town overall on this watershed area and their MS4 program and their operation and maintenance of all their fields. And we can definitely make a note. Tom, I don't know if you want to weigh in at all, but we can talk about the treatment plan for specifically for Walker Field with them.
Right, yeah, so, I mean, that's a conversation to have with Ed. I know that they are very selective on how they treat the fields, but I'd have to follow up with them regards to how to minimize or maintain what he's got.
All right, Allison, do you have a question?
Yeah, as far as smartweed is concerned, the last couple of years, we've had so much rain. It is native, but it does like explode when we have these heavy, even rains. It's in everybody's garden, it's everywhere, but it is native, which is sort of discouraging. But it's taking advantage of all this rain, that, 2 years of way over average rain in this part of the world. And I had a question about the historical level of the pond. What is, if you have an elevation, what is it in regard to the level like now, or, the fact that it's high now? Is it lower than where it is now? Do you know what the relative difference is, more or less?
So the elevation right now with that metal plate is higher than the historical elevation that we will set the new weir height to. The new weir height is going to be more consistent with what the original outlet control structure height was. I think it's about a little less than a foot. I think it's about 3/4 of a foot higher.
So if it's 3/4 of a foot lower, would the oaks along the bank still be flooded? Do you know, Barbara? And yeah.
Yeah, well, I put in a depth gauge over on our side of the pond. And it was consistently at 2 feet 4 inches from the bottom of the pond at that spot. So that's irrelevant. But the 2 feet 4 inches that it was the depth at that spot for several years before the dam broke and the pond drained. So that is of course based on where the stake is and so forth, but the level of 2 feet 4 inches could be calculated, and it looks the isthmus between the two ponds was always about 6 inches of concrete above the water. And most recently, it's been 6 inches below the water. So the water's, I would say, at least 9 to 12 inches deeper than before. So the trees, the oak trees, were fine when it was before the dam break, but it's the recent last year, since maybe July, that they've all been flooded up along their trunks.
Isn't the level in the future going to be an operating decision as opposed to a design decision? In other
Yes,
words,
well,
you have flexibility to adjust the level based on
Right.
conditions, right? And
Right. We're specifying based on our engineering judgment and, historical, what we recommend the contractor set it out when he installs the gate. But then the town can manipulate that height. We can work with the town on what the ideal height is for the water level in the future. It's gonna have, instead of having the drop-in stop logs, like the old one had, it's gonna have a turn wheel. So it'll be a lot easier to manipulate that weir height, going forward.
it's I guess the question that's been asked several times, I think, is the anticipated level or design level, so to speak, will that inundate these trees, these oak trees?
Doesn't sound like it.
I don't think so. If everyone was happy with the 9 to 12 inch range where it was before, then that's where we're planning on setting it now. If the trees were happy there, I think they'll be happy again.
Okay, any
One
other
more
questions?
question. I have one
Oh,
more question. I'm
Allison.
sorry to belabor it, but you were saying the pond is very important because it's a watershed and it's affecting and helping with flooding and catching the water. Well, over time, it gets shallower and shallower because of the vegetation. So if you use a historical level, it's going to have less cubic feet of water in the pond if you keep to that same level. And so that, I don't know at what point there's a tipping point where then it doesn't function as well as a storage pond. That's all. But I mean, that's getting technical, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Mhm. Yep. I think there's plenty of freeboard in the pond too. The structure has the overflow grate on the top and can accommodate, I think, more water than it has in the past without overtopping the road or, things like that.
But at the cost of the trees along the bank.
Well, temporary, so flood storage can be very temporary during, we have these large rain events and
I think.
kind of like we were saying before, for short periods of time, the trees are okay, being inundated with water. So the intention would be, you capture the water during a big storm and you kind of hold it back for a short period of time until the system can clear itself, and then the water level goes down within, a couple days back to where you want it to be.
Okay. No more questions?
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Do you anticipate having to hydro rake, which would potentially increase the water depth? And also, thanks for doing all this. It's a great presentation.
Thanks. We're not proposing hydro raking at this time. We're hoping that the Floridone takes care of those weeds.
Okay. So there's no more questions. We can close this hearing. Can I have a motion to close the hearing for 0 Charles River Street, Walker Pond, DEP file 234-923?
Motion to close. Second.
right.
And just to let you
Thanks.
know, I didn't draft the permit for tonight because I didn't know if they were going to have outstanding questions, but I'll have it drafted for our March 14th meeting.
Okay, great. So let's vote on this motion. Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Paulina,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, well, thank you very much. Nice presentation and sounds like a good project.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is 80 Gary Road. You know, this might be an extended discussion. I don't know, maybe we should try to clear this enforcement issue first. If that's not going to take too long. That's
Um, Yeah, that's fine with me.
okay.
Is Fernando available?
Fernando,
Fernando
Okay.
Delfior, he's the owner.
all right, so what exactly is the issue?
Up there's two Fernando.
Fernando, you're on mute.
Is there an echo or is that just in my head?
Oh, there is an echo.
Fernando? Can you hear us? You're on mute. I'm not sure what's going on. So why don't we move forward to Gary Road?
Can you hear us, Fernando? We can't hear you.
He's on mute. And now he's gone. All right, so let's move on to 80 Gary Road. Open the hearing for, this was continued from, I think it was early January 11th. 80 Gary Road, DEP file 234-922, notice of intent. At their initial presentation, the commission noted that there were a few issues, incomplete submittal with regard to the trees that were going to be removed, with regard to the stormwater system, and also there was some issue with the riverfront restoration, which honestly, I can't remember what exactly the issue is. Maybe before we started with, maybe Clay, you could outline what that issue is, just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, when this project originally came before us, there were a couple components. One of the reasons why it was continued was for modification to the restoration plan. There was some comments, I think, from the previous meeting about having a tree inventory and meeting the tree removal guidelines, having the 2-to-1 replacement. With the riverfront standards, the information that was submitted, there was a couple typos in it. They have since submitted the revised materials. They did cite their riverfront areas and standards. They did refer to the standards. One of the things that was briefly discussed prior to the submission of that was the mitigation area essentially is pretty ambitious. What they're doing is they're proposing to do extensive invasive species mitigation across the inner riparian area and replant and monitor with a new native species. The argument under the application is that that is certainly a positive, to reestablish the riverfront area as a natural habitat again. My feeling on that is that it's definitely ambitious, and it definitely has the intention of creating that riverfront habitat. What's unusual about this is that under our own precedences, under your precedence as a board, Usually it's quantifiable. It's done by square footage. The regulations do leave room to have some of the less than quantifiable, rather than dealing with square footages, having the net benefit. Oftentimes, stormwater management on a single family house is one of those things that is harder to quantify compared to square footage of degradation and new disturbances within the riverfront, but it can, the commission can weigh those things against the additional degraded. In this case, it's quite a bit of invasive species management and quite a bit of new native plantings and a mix of habitat, frankly. So they did submit the revised planting, and as you move forward, it'll kind of be up to you to determine where or how you weight that against the new degraded. That's essentially the biggest reason areas in the riverfront standards, making sure we have the correct calculations from the first meeting.
Okay, thanks. We have a couple people from Goddard Consulting representing the applicant. I don't know if you want to just quickly go over your new work. I know you did a tree inventory, which was quite comprehensive. And you have proposed mitigation for the trees anyway, with regard to complying with our guidelines. And some of us were out there this morning taking a look at it. So why don't you give us a quick summary?
Sure thing. I will give you the rundown. I'll share my screen here.
This is Chris, right?
Yes, my name is Chris Frateroli. I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting, project manager for this project. So just to kind of reorient everybody, here's an aerial of the site. Obviously, house and driveway at the right. This is Gary Road. And then we have lawn extending to about, in this region, this section of the parcel is all wooded. It does have a pretty good dominance of invasive vegetation. So as Clay was saying, that's going to be really the focus of our mitigation efforts here. We have Herd Brook along the back, and that is a perennial stream. So that's why we're in this riverfront area conversation. And we do have a little weird triangle on the other side of the stream as well. Here's just the USGS, just for further context, and a little photo of the house at the front. Moving on down, our existing conditions plan. So again, this is, rotated 90 degrees, north being to plan right here. We have the house at the bottom of the plan here. We have both two series of wetland flags. The GC 1 through 11 series is going to be the mean annual high water line of that stream back there. And then the A series that extends in front of it is the bordering vegetated wetland line. So that is, very relatively narrow along this section of the stream. And then it kind of opens up over here. As far as the riverfront area on the site, you can see this green hatched area is that inner riparian zone, 0 to 100 feet. We have about 15,612 square feet in that inner riparian zone. And then that outer riparian zone, 100 to 200 feet. We have about 12,152 square feet in that zone, for a total of a little shy of 28,000 square feet. This was one of the errors that Clay was referring to. This was just a simple math error that we have since corrected. Under existing conditions, this is essentially what the lot looks like. Obviously blue, and we're talking about within riverfront area here, within commission jurisdiction. The blue is the existing degraded area within riverfront area. It's about 2,100 square feet. A lawn surrounding the home is a little shy of 11,000 square feet. And then really this entire back section of the lot is pretty heavily dominated with invasive species. That's a little shy of 17,000 square feet. Couple of pictures, as I think, we kind of saw on our site walk earlier today. There's a really great heavy dominance of invasive species. The herbaceous and shrub layers are essentially entirely invasive species. The tree canopy is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a third to a half invasive. There's a good presence of Norway maples in that area. So you see in this area, we see those garlic mustard seed heads that have mostly senesced, some English ivy over here. We have a good bit of Oriental bittersweet that's really climbing up a lot of those trees closer to the river and in that 25-foot buffer zone to BVW at the back of the site. We also have a good ground cover dominance here that I'd say covers, maybe a third or a half of this wooded area at the back. It's all Japanese Pachysandra. It's a garden escapee that just really runs rampant over everything. And so I'm glad that, we kind of got the chance to take a look at this all together earlier today. Moving down to our proposed plot plan. Obviously, the house here is shaded in gray, walkway and driveway at the frontage. We'll see this, kind of smaller hatching in here, really tight around the house. This is our proposed lawn area. It's really just enough to be able to access around the house. We're trying to kind of maximize the amount of habitat space that we're able to provide here. So really the entire rest of the site, including up each property line a bit, is going to be managed for invasive species. This is primarily lawn over here, but this is all going to be converted to native habitat. This is all going to get seeded with a nice native herbaceous mix that's appropriate to the site, and then planted thoroughly with shrubs and trees. You also see we do have a stormwater management system back here. It's 4 storm tech units. The revised plan does provide some calculations as to the capacity of that, some more details of the system itself. Moving on down the line, this is essentially what we're looking at for a finished product, more or less, just in really broad strokes. This beige area being the home itself, walkway, driveway, etc. Again, that really narrow lawn around the outside, just really what's needed, nothing more. And then the green area is going to be what we are planting. So this can really all be considered, at least the intent is to create a nice native habitat there with healthy vertical stratification between herbaceous shrub and canopy layers. As was requested, we did have an arborist go out and inventory the trees out there. So this is a little graphic of what we've found, or what he found. Then I took that graphic and kind of overlaid it on the site plan just to make it a bit more cohesive. So these are essentially all the trees. I think we might have found one today that did not make its way into the inventory, but these are the trees on the site. Yellow being red maple, that's the primary species here. We also have a decent bit of Norway maple mixed in, a couple of black cherries, a couple of elms, and a few others. So that is what we're looking at. As far as tree removal, we do have a decent bit of grading that needs to be done. So we are proposing to cut a lot of trees. There's no question about that. What we've done, though, is we've essentially said we're going to avoid this 25-foot buffer zone to BVW as much as possible. The only tree that we're proposing for cutting there is 21, is this Norway maple. We think that's kind of a decent balance between providing invasive species management and enhancing that habitat while still, for the vast majority, respecting that 25-foot buffer zone. This is another Norway maple over here, but this is dead and laying on the ground. We have a planting schedule. So what we've really done is we've gone and beefed up that planting plan a lot. We've provided a substantial increase in the number of trees and shrubs. So we're going to move down one more, and you'll see, it has filled in nicely. These quantities of proposed plantings do comply with the town's policy on tree replacement. So for every tree that's going to be removed, we went through and did the math, and we're kind of combining the tree and shrub replacements. So in total, we have 29 trees to be planted, 56 shrubs to be planted. We think that's going to provide, again, that nice vertical stratification. So you get, a healthy balance between an herbaceous, a shrub, and a tree layer. We've also added a handful of plantings over on the other side of the stream here. We think we're not planning on doing any sort of invasive species management over there. This hasn't been included in any square footage calculations. We thought it would just be kind of a nice nod that, this is riverfront area and buffer zone as well. So we're going to go and kind of enhance that area a little bit as well, because it is really just an extension of what we see on this side of the stream. So that is essentially where we are at right now. I'm happy to take any questions, any feedback or suggestions, comments, anything of that nature.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's go to the commissioners with any comments or questions. We'll start with Paulina.
Yes, I have a question. You showed us a plan. If you can go back to your page 13.
Yep.
And so there are a lot of trees that are labeled in the back, like 29, 26. I think they're all red maples. And you said you're not removing those. You're just removing number 21, which is a Norway maple. Is that correct?
That within the 25-foot buffer zone, correct. Yep. That 21 is the only one in the 25-foot buffer that's getting removed.
Okay, so everything else is just a tree, just you identified, but it's not being removed.
In that 25-foot buffer zone, yes. We
Maybe
did.
I don't see the buffer zone.
Sorry, that's.
Oh,
this
yes, I see it right there. Yep.
along here. So really everything inside this erosion control line, that's all going to have to get removed for grading purposes, because we do have grade changes through here. And then these, let's see, 4 right along just outside that erosion control line are also proposed for removal. Obviously 3 being Norway maples.
I guess to me, it's why would they be removed if they're not going to be impacted by the grading? I guess to me, I see them. Yes, they're not native, but at the same time, it's a tree. I don't think.
Sure thing. Yeah.
I don't think you should just remove it just to remove it.
Yeah. So
But
the
that's
idea here,
all.
sorry. The idea here is really to kind of open it up and allow for, like I was saying earlier, that vertical stratification. There's really no shrub layer in this area, and the only herbaceous vegetation are some of those really aggressive invasives like the Pachysandra and English ivy. So our goal is really to open it up, allow more sunlight to penetrate, allow those herbaceous and shrub layers to really thrive and reestablish themselves. So that's the idea behind that.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Allison?
I didn't do the math, but are the trees that are being removed in the buffer zone, are there in the new planting plan, are there sufficient quantities to meet the?
Yeah. So,
No, I mean, does anyone?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, okay, that's one. And
Yep.
the second thing is, I apologize because I don't remember, but I don't remember, is American elm really on our plant list? Is it really? Clay? Can you check?
I don't know if it's on your plant list specifically, but the reason that we included those was because there are a few elms in that area that will need to be removed for grading activities. So we thought it would be a nice nod to kind of replace those in kind. But if we do have concerns about Dutch elm disease, we can certainly revisit those as choices for plantings.
I mean, unless you're going to replace a disease-resistant American elm, which you didn't say you were, you just have it almost Americana. I would not agree, I don't think it's a good idea. The disease is not gone. It's not as bad as planting an American chestnut, but it's not far off. So I love them. They're my favorite tree. But there are some trees that are disease resistant, American elm varieties. But I would look into that. don't just get an American elm, you have to get one that's really been tested.
Sure
Um,
thing.
And the Arnold Arboretum has planted some that have done very well, but they're hard to find. So, you know, if you can't find them, you might think about another like a pin oak or something like that, you know, some kind of, or a swamp white or whatever. Okay. That's
Sure
on our
thing.
list. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah, we'll take a look into that, and if it looks like we'll be able to get some American elms that are resistant, then great, we'll go ahead with that. If not, we'll swap them out for something else.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Brett, any questions?
Yes, first of all, the slide you have up right now that shows the planting plan for all of those items are new plantings, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. There's nothing shown on this plan as far as trees to remain. These are all trees and shrubs to be planted.
Okay, but am I right then that nothing other than maybe one Norway maple, nothing is going to be removed from this area that you have outlined here?
So there is tree removal. I apologize. I should have it shown here. There is tree removal in this area, kind of closer to the house. The really limited tree removal where we're just taking that one tree is within that 25-foot buffer zone, which follows a line somewhat like this. We've kept it kind of, minimal as far as major trees go, but we do think there's going to be, there's still going to be a lot of open ground in there to be a blank canvas, so to speak. And then if we do go into the kind of the nitty gritty of the narrative part of the restoration plan, there are some provisions in there that allow for field calls about placements at the discretion of a supervising environmental scientist. So yeah, there are still going to be trees along this edge within, more or less 25 feet here. But I think we're going to be able to site them such that, we're not going to be interfering with each other.
So I had two other comments. One is, I'm not positive what our guidelines are. I know we have the option of replacing a certain number of trees with shrubs rather than at a 4-to-1 ratio, rather than trees at a 2-to-1 ratio. But there's also a guideline for the minimum ratio of use of trees versus shrubs. And I'm hoping one of the other commissioners can remember what that ratio is and whether this meets that. That's one. And then the other thing is that when we were out there, we saw that there was a couple of very, very mature grand cottonwoods that I'm not sure are on your inventory, and I'd like to clarify what the plan is about those trees.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your first point, I remember this was fresh in my mind because I was working on it recently. The provision is that up to half of the trees to be replaced may be replaced at a 4-to-1 ratio with shrubs. So that's what we've gone ahead and done. We think it's, again, going to provide that nice mix between that canopy and shrub layer. And then as far as those cottonwoods, this number 39 right here is essentially right on the property line. That one is proposed to be cut. The other one that you saw is well off site over here.
And what's the need to cut that? I mean, this I don't know if you have a figure on the diameter of that tree or its possible age. And
I do believe those were included in the tree inventory. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. That tree was listed as a 37 to 42 inch DBH. So another stipulation of that tree replacement policy is that trees over, I think, 32 inches should be replaced at a 3-to-1 ratio. So that's been included in that as well. I think the major concern is that because of its size, it is going to be kind of overhanging or at least very near to the proposed building here. So that's really the idea with that one. But the second one that you saw is offsite and is more over here, obviously not a part of our plans.
So the tree couldn't be pruned instead of removed?
It's possible. That's certainly something we can look into.
It was a visually stunning tree, and it, from what I know, it has pretty good habitat value. One thing I'm thinking about is that there's really a nice effort to remove invasives and to restore a lot of native trees. However, from a habitat standpoint, I believe it's really nice if you have some mature trees along with some younger ones, so that there's, it's not all, I mean, you're going to open up a lot of sunlight, but then all these trees are going to grow up and mature. You're going to have shade again. And if you can preserve as many of the mature trees while you're introducing the young ones, it just seems like that's going to have a real benefit to the area.
Sure, that's absolutely something we can explore. Maybe we meet in the middle there and hold on to a few more of the mature trees and kind of scale back in that regard.
Anything else, Fred?
Nope.
All right, Reed?
Yeah. Chris, thanks for meeting us at the site today. That was very helpful.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and I'd just like to echo Fred's point about the cottonwood, right? It's a very impressive tree in good health. So I think anything that can be done to save that tree would be appreciated. So yeah, I appreciate what you're proposed to do also in terms of creating a native habitat back behind the house in that front area. And I think a lot of what you're proposing to do is great with invasive species removal and the native plantings. But yeah, I guess there are some of these trees that especially along the edges of the property line, so some of these elms and black cherries that seem like they're in good health and don't necessarily need to be removed. So yeah, I don't know if you could just, I guess, I think you've already committed to kind of looking into that a little bit. So would appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
We will.
Yeah. And then, so in terms of the lawn you're proposing, it seems like a very small lawn. So I think we just would want to make sure, right, because there will be the temptation of potentially of somebody wanting to cut into this native area and turn it into lawn. So we'd want to make sure that there are appropriate markers to prevent that from happening.
Sure thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually included in our updated riverfront restoration plan in the narrative portion. I believe it's under 10.585G requires continuing conditions that prohibit encroachment into any sort of restored or mitigated areas. So what we've done is we've left it a little open-ended, but essentially said that there'll be a low split rail fence or a rope fence or something of that nature installed along that line there.
Yeah, sounds good. And we have markers that I think can be installed too.
Sure thing.
So yeah.
Yeah, we can condition that.
Yeah. So yeah, appreciate the thought about, I think, it's been very thoughtful in terms of, trying to, create a habitat here, but yeah, I think that, if you could just do a little more thinking about whether you could make it even better, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Reed? No?
That's it for me.
All right, I have a few questions. First on this plan, I think you mentioned that, virtually every tree within the erosion control barrier is going to be removed. I just want to be clear on that.
Correct. Yep. Correct. That's correct.
And so it's approximately 25 trees.
Correct.
And you mentioned that there are 2 trees that are on a butter property, one on each side, that are going to be removed. But I don't think these were included in the plan. Now, I think Clay said this morning that these trees on the butter properties could be included in the overall plan. But if you're going to be removing these trees, then you need to add in some compensation for that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. To that point, I do just want to say they weren't included in the inventory that was provided to us by the arborist. But as I was doing the math and figuring out the appropriate tree replacements, I did include them in that regard.
Okay, good. We could double check that. Yeah, and I'm sorry to see all these trees go, but again, if some of the larger ones could be retained, I think that would be very positive to the commission, especially the number 39 there. Yeah. Now, my only other comments are with regard to the stormwater system. You provided basically infiltration capacity for the roof of this building and the courtyard, which the total capacity or total impervious area is over 4,000 square feet. And so if you read the stormwater bylaw, it stipulates a minimum of 1 inch over all the impervious areas. So from that point of view, this infiltration area is slightly undersized. And it's unclear where the runoff from the other impervious areas would go, which would be the driveways. So that's something I think you should look at. Also, there's no discussion of the soil characteristics where the infiltration basin is going to go. And, generally people provide some analysis, through a test pit or at a minimum a paper analysis. And we sometimes would defer a test pit to a later time, but it's typically a condition that we try to look at just to verify that there's where the groundwater is with respect to these infiltration chambers, and also the soil capacity. There's a couple other things that are typically required, like a operation and management plan for the infiltration system. But again, sometimes we would defer that till later, maybe even after construction, but certainly before the closing of the project. And then for a larger project like this, most applicants would also demonstrate that they're complying with several of the mass stormwater standards, namely that the peak runoff from this project is not going to exceed, the post-construction runoff is not going to exceed the pre-construction conditions, and that the infiltration area that is being lost is going to be replaced. The infiltration capacity is going to be replaced by the stormwater system, infiltration system. I would note that generally, if you provide 1 inch of capacity over the impervious surfaces, that those conditions are are typically met, just by virtue of the capacity of the system. So, then my final comment on the stormwater system is, what's going to happen when the system gets surcharged, if there's a major storm? It's not clear where the water is going to go. Are we creating, or will we have a point source, like an outlet from this infiltration system, or are the roof leaders going to back up, or what's going to happen, and where is that water going to go? I couldn't tell whether you're showing the final grading or not on this plan, but I think
Yeah,
that
so
I think one of the abutters had commented before, that they were concerned about where the water was going to go. So anyway, that's sort of a mishmash of questions, but I think in summary that there are some requirements of the bylaw that are not applicable to smaller developments, but for something like this, they are.
sure thing. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit the stormwater design is a little out of my area of expertise. I usually defer to the engineers on that topic. But this is all really great feedback, and I'll get in touch with them and see how many of these things we can button up for you.
Great. All right, that's all my questions. I would go to Clay and Deb to see if they have any questions. I'd be interested in Clay's point of view about compliance with the riverfront restoration requirements.
Yeah, so I was just rechecking my numbers now. Under what we usually see, compliance with, I think it's 1058 5 redevelopment under 5G, usually the 2-to-1 mitigation that a lot of standard projects follow. As I said, it's a pretty quantifiable square footage. I was pulling the numbers that Chris provided for the existing degraded versus the proposed degraded areas, as well as the previously altered areas. I know the numbers that Chris provided also included areas of invasive species, but even removing that, I think that's relevant to the type of mitigation they are proposing, but just under that standard 2-to-1. The reduction in lawn minus the new house footprint does provide a certain amount of square footage, and the current degraded area on the lot is below 10% as it currently is. So when you remove the additional square footage up to 10%, because that's generally allowable before the mitigation kicks in, and then you look at the conversion of lawn to renaturalized areas here with the native plantings, the mitigation would be I think it's total about 6,000 square feet or so, give or take about 150 square feet, that would otherwise be required for additional 2-to-1 mitigation. In this case, according to their planting plan, their seeding areas, the whole shaded area on the restoration area is a total of 13,000 square feet. As you've noted, there is mature trees. There's a lot of invasive species cover. There are some native plantings in there. So I think it leaves it open for you to determine if, this restoration here, the square footage where the lawn is being given up, like on the sides of the house, certainly contribute. But the outstanding amount of what would be 2-to-1 mitigation is about 6,000 square feet. If you feel that this 13,000 square feet or almost 14,000 square feet of renaturalization satisfies what would be an additional 6,000 square feet of conversion of lawn, it certainly to me appears to be complying with the riverfront area. That is up to you. It could be that you wanted to see more of a square footage, but I also just pull the regs out in front of me, and there are provisions under section G for the commission to attempt to quantify these changes. So in my opinion, I think this can be interpreted as complying with the riverfront area, provided that they have the mitigation, the ongoing, monitoring for both survivability as well as management of invasive species long term. And of course, as was mentioned earlier, having the some kind of barrier along with our plaques, just signifying that this area is protected in perpetuity. That certainly would be an ongoing condition in the order of conditions. I think that it would comply.
All right, great. I don't think there's much room to expand the mitigation. I think they've maxed it out anyway. So Deb, do you have any questions or thoughts, comments?
No, this was kind of Clay's review, so I'll go with Clay's opinion on it.
Yeah, I think with long-term protection and mitigation, I think that there was a lot of clear evidence, and as the commissioners are able to attend the site walk today, there is quite a bit of extensive, both invasive and generally non-native species back there. The bittersweet is definitely taking over. I think long-term it'll be a little bit of a struggle to keep invasives from re-encroaching from neighboring properties, but that's an ongoing problem that is statewide. It's not unique to this site. I think that while this is an ambitious plan, if it's monitored, for a minimum of 3 to 5 years, and even if the homeowner going into it is made aware of what to look for in the future to prevent the new plantings from being taken over, like something like bittersweet, it certainly it could really be a net benefit mitigation area.
Yeah, it could set the standard for this area.
That's the goal.
All right, so is there anybody in the audience, any members of the public that want to comment?
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, so sounds like there's a few loose ends to be tied up, so we could continue this till our next meeting and hopefully wrap it up then. Does that sound okay?
Excellent. That's acceptable to me.
Okay, so can I have a motion to continue this hearing to, somebody help me with the date, the next meeting,
March 14th.
March 14th? Okay, I have a motion to continue the hearing for 80 Gary Road, DEP file 234-922 to March 14th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Paulina,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, thanks a lot, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
All right, now is Fernando still here?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, sorry for
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
for making you wait. So I guess the floor is yours, or Deb, you want to give us some background or?
Sure. So once again, this property is 40 Lake. Clay, maybe you can put up the plan that I emailed you. So I was first approached about this property back in June last year, actually by a neighbor. So essentially the plan was to take the existing house down to its foundation, and there wasn't going to be any ground disturbance or excavation or anything that would trigger them to come before conservation for a permit. Field Resources did work on this existing conditions plan back in June last year. And the owner hired Rich Kirby from Leck Environmental to conduct the delineation. So you can see that it's a very steep drop off at the rear of the property, and the bordering vegetated wetlands are located, pretty close to the bottom of that slope. So there has been some issues as far as the building department and their regulations. So also back in June, there was a stop work order through the building department. And that's around the same time that I was contacted by a neighbor that was concerned that they were doing work without a permit. So at that time, I talked to the site supervisor at that time, a woman named Maria. She came into the office and we discussed what the project was going to be. And she assured me it was just going down to the foundation. There wouldn't be any excavation. So I requested that they put in an erosion control about 10 feet off the back of the existing house, just because the site was a pretty big mess at that time. There was lots of construction debris and other items kind of around the property. So I asked her to put in the erosion control and, you know, to notify me if plans changed and they were going to be doing any work that was going to trigger review by the Conservation Commission. So I hadn't heard anything for some time. And then recently, the building superintendent, Joe, reached out to me. He had stopped work again on the project. Apparently, they were supposed to be putting in footings within the building itself, but instead put them outside the building. And there were some other issues with them not following up with various inspections at certain points during the reconstruction. So I went out today with the building superintendent to see what was going on with the site and to meet with the owner, Fernando, who's here now, just to see what the site conditions were presently, because I hadn't been out there in some time. So if you can see, it's hard to tell, but the 100-foot buffer kind of runs not quite through the middle of the existing house on this plan, but you know, essentially a portion of the existing house was within the buffer. So I went out today. The building supervisor had stopped construction maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if Fernando can correct me on that. For various issues. So when we came today, they were doing work on the property, even though there was a stop order. So, you know, they spoke with the building superintendent, and so they have several steps to go through to come in compliance with their regulations. So at the time I walked around the property, there was an erosion control that had been installed. But there was obvious signs that there had been work done. Clay, if you can maybe put up some of the pictures.
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah,
Sure.
can you go back to the site plan?
Sorry. Sure. Go ahead, Clay.
So the original project was to take down the house and just,
To the foundation
and then what?
and then reconstruct the house in the same footprint.
And it's partially within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Correct.
Why wasn't that, why wasn't a notice of intent or an RDA submitted?
Because it wasn't going to trigger it because there wasn't going to be any ground disturbance.
I see.
Because they were just going down to the foundation, and that was what we were told was the extent of the project. They, in fact, the garage remained, and they took down the rest of the house to the foundation. So it didn't trigger us. So when I went over it with the site supervisor, I said, if there's any disturbance beyond that, you need to come back and you're going to have to file for a permit.
Okay, but just, forgive my ignorance, but if there's no ground disturbance in a buffer zone, then it doesn't trigger the Wetlands Act?
Correct,
Okay.
right? So Clay, if you some pictures up now would be great. So the good news is there is an erosion control in. So the site is stable. I don't know how much grading was done.
Yeah, okay. Can I pitch in now?
Well, let's see the pictures first.
Okay. So, all right, so that is so the street is in front of us. That's the building superintendent walking. So a portion of this is within the buffer zone. So that had been lawn area. That is around the back of the newly constructed house. So there are erosion controls, but obviously there has been ground disturbance, vegetation removal. I don't know about grading. And essentially the footings were put in that area as well. Okay, Clay. One of the issues was the site was kind of messy. And so that's the front of the property, but that is outside of our jurisdiction. Okay, so one of the concerns I had was that rather large pine tree that is in our jurisdiction, and obviously the construction is very close to that, so I don't know if that tree is compromised at this point.
But that was an existing foundation, right?
Yes, but okay, so this is just showing just some of the debris from the site in front of the erosion controls. So I'm just trying to show, so there has been ground disturbance and vegetation removal. So I had instructed Fernando that he may want to contact LEC, Rich Kirby to Rich Kirby to revisit the site, and I'm probably
Who is
thinking that they probably should have an enforcement order to submit after the fact notice of intent.
Is Rich Kirby
He's the wetlands consultant.
Oh.
He's the one that did the delineation.
Where are they going to put the stormwater system, the infiltration system?
So since they were going down to the foundation, apparently it didn't trigger them having to do stormwater, according to the building commission.
So, thanks Debbie for coming by today and meet up with me on site. So basically, the plan, like Debbie described really well, was just to come down to the first floor decking and then rebuild and put a second story. It's one-story home, put a second story, keep in the garage, just redo the roofing. And when we apply for the permit, we're about to get the building permit. And one of the requests was, okay, can you make sure that the existing foundation has footings, right? Because it's only one story, which is a poor foundation, poured concrete. So we did a test pit, around the foundation, and we realized that you do not have a footing, right? So, my engineer, he sketched out a underpin, like basically do a footing under the foundation. And all right, so the question is, all right, so we're going to do from the outside or inside? And we agree, okay, let's do it from the inside, so we don't have to work on the outside. And I was on the audit commission. Maria was the project manager. I was an audit commission for a little bit through a surgery. Obviously, no one's problem, my problem. And they figured, okay, so it'd be easy just to do a trench along the outside and do the underpin from the outside. And, you know, everybody was under the impression that the erosion control, the 10 feet away from the house in the back, that's the, you know, they stop, like where, like you can do a little work in there, but you cannot move beyond the erosion control. So all they've done, you do like a very narrow trench along the foundation, put the footing, backfill it. So then you see obviously some leftover dirt on top of, which used to be a lawn anyway, so that was to be like grass and stuff. So that was an honest mistake. And, you know, other than that, like beyond the 10 feet, you know, it's just the way it was before. No trees were cut it, no vegetation was cut it down. So now I'm here just to correct, and, you know, I can engage Richard Kirby and see how we can go about it. Like Debbie also mentioned that tree that's on the corner of the garage. That's also not safe. I mean, the garage didn't do anything, didn't do underpin or anything, not excavation. All we did in that garage was residing the garage and new roof. So nothing was done around that tree, new anyways. So that's that.
So Deb, are you suggesting they should submit a NOI?
Yeah, I think,
After the fact?
after the fact, I just think that, you know, the project in general hasn't been managed very well from the start. And, you know, it's been difficult to get a hold of the people involved. And, you know, I went with their word that it was just gonna be, you know, work down to the foundation. And that isn't the case, and I think that we would have required a notice of intent.
Yeah, I mean, I think from an engineering point of view, if it was a single story house and you were going to put a second story on it, that it's almost required to do some investigation to see if the foundation can support the second story. And if you didn't know that there was a footing or not, then I think the prudent assumption would have been that there is no footing, and therefore you would have to do some excavation outside of the foundation to put in the footing. So, you know, the whole premise that this wasn't going to involve any construction outside the footing, I think, you know, this is hindsight, of course, but, you know, from a practical point of view, it was probably not a good assumption.
And I apologize to that Maria, the project manager, she was no longer with us, you know, and so it like changing and was at a commission. I have a great person involved now.
I'm surprised the building department let you get away with that, but that's just my comment.
Well,
with keeping the foundation.
Without,
yeah, that's kind of a work in progress. I guess there was several inspections that they expected that they would be having that were kind of bypassed. So they're kind of going backwards at this point.
I'm mentioning a design issue, not a construction issue. You know, if you're going to take a single story house and create a second story on the same foundation, you have to do a structural analysis of which, and the key part of that would be ascertaining whether there was a footing or not. But anyway, that's all beside the point. It's hindsight. That's all.
So anyways, the project is stopped at this point, anyways. So, you know, I'm happy to write up an enforcement order, requiring them to file a notice of intent.
That seems reasonable.
Okay, and the erosion controls are in, so the site is stable.
Allison, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a what if. If Fernando had not planned to have a second story and just take it down to the footing and just rebuild a one-story house, he still would have disturbed the area around just by construction.
Yeah,
So I don't think that in the future that one can assume that to do a complete rebuild of a house, whether it be 2 stories or not, whether it be a footing or not, that you can assume there's no disturbance around the
Yeah.
house. It's going to be disturbed.
I agree. It's very hard to walk around
So
the house.
I think that you were told incorrect information, but at the same time, I think in the future, we can never assume that will happen that way. It
yeah,
will
I agree.
always be disturbed. That's all I have to say.
That's a good point. I agree with that. Anybody else have a comment? All right, so you're gonna write up an enforcement order and ask for a NOI,
Right.
and hopefully we could process that quickly.
So, Debbie, how do I get that? When you're gonna mail it or put in a photo, or how do I get that so I can forward that to Richard?
So if you want to email me your address, I'll send it certified mail and I'll also email it to you.
Okay, that'll be perfect. Yeah, if you email, I'll send that to Richard right away and we'll get on it.
Okay,
My
Sounds-
apologies.
thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Take care.
You too.
All right, we have a hearing to continue. 731 South Street, that was continued from a couple meetings ago, or maybe one meeting ago. The issues there were tree replacement and stormwater.
Right, so they're still working on those plans.
Okay, so did they indicate a date they want to continue to, or?
So they did request a continuance to the next meeting on March 14th.
On March 14th. Okay, so can I have a motion to continue the hearing for 731 South Street to March 14th? That's DEP file number 234-920.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Paulina,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, so the last issue, or last 2 issues are order of conditions. First one is for 33 Border Road, DEP file 234-921. Deb had sent a draft order of conditions.
Right, Clay, if you can put that up, would be great. Okay, so this project is, relatively minor. It's for an addition. There's a 2nd-story addition and the 1st-story addition at the rear of the house. The addition's about 140 square feet. So they had proposed for mitigation because they are in riverfront area and they are already over the 10% that they would need to provide approximately 280 square feet of mitigation. So they were going to be removing some lawn and putting in 2 areas of pollinator, herbaceous species and some shrubs, and they were going to keep a mowed access path between the 2 areas to maintain the access to the rear of the property. If you remember, this project is in the 200-foot riverfront area to Rosemary Brook, which is located off-site, and they did not delineate the bank of the stream. It is a an armored bank. There wasn't any bordering vegetated wetlands associated with it. But as they didn't actually do a delineation for me to review, I just put a note that this order isn't approving a delineation in the field for this project and any future projects. So in order to have that line approved, we would need to have it delineated in the field. Let's see. So because the addition is less than the 25% trigger for stormwater infiltration, they did not propose that. Let's see. So the shrubs they were planning on installing are 3 serviceberry, 3 high bush blueberry, and the herbaceous were a couple species of milkweed, goldenrod, and oxeye. I suggest that we require a minimum of 5 permanent bounds because they are proposing to keep a mowed path between the 2 mitigation areas. So to avoid, you know, creep into those areas, I think we should require 3 on the longer side and 2 on the shorter side. So the mitigation does meet the riverfront area regulations for redevelopment. Clay, if you want to go down. So the conditions are pretty standard. Keep going. Okay, so there is the so the planting work, the 280 square foot restoration mitigation planting area. Actually up above, did I highlight, I was reading what invasive species they were planning to remove, and they had burning bush, but then they also had arborvitae and viburnum, which aren't invasive as far as I know. So I do need to clarify what species they actually are considering invasive and planning to remove. Go ahead back down. Okay, so once again, those are the proposed plantings. That's my suggestion for permanent demarcation. Okay, go down. And then we have the DEP requires we have that last condition, no further alteration within the restoration area is allowed, except as required to maintain the area in its restored or mitigated condition. So that's essentially it.
Okay, it looks good. Any of the commissioners have thoughts, comments? Allison?
Yes, it's tiny. On the first page, the Latin word amalank, you wrote amalank here. It's amalank here, not so A-M-E.
Okay, I may have copied it from.
Okay.
Okay, duly noted. I will fix that.
Anybody else?
So do you agree, Allison, that viburnum and arborvitae aren't invasive to
Arborvitae,
be
well,
removed?
I mean, they may be non-native, but that doesn't mean that they're invasive. It depends on the viburnum, and it depends on the arborvitae.
Okay, so I need more.
The genus are not invasive, but the species may be, but they're not invasive, may be non-native. But you can have native arborvitae, and you can and many varieties of viburnum are native and
Right.
not are invasive. So you did the right thing by asking what they are.
Yeah, okay, I'll follow up and get clarification as far as that goes.
All right, if there's no other comments, let's vote on issuing an order of conditions for 33 Border Road, DEP file 234-921. Anybody make a motion?
I make a motion.
All right,
Second.
Thank
all right, let's vote. Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Paulina,
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, there's another one, 53 Heather Lane. What's the
That's
deal?
just kind of a placeholder.
Okay, so that's it. Any,
Yeah, we have a couple other things that we just wanted to bring up.
Okay.
So if you remember the,
you got 4 minutes.
oh, okay. Is something
No,
good
no.
coming on TV that I need to
No,
know
no,
about?
I'm just kidding you.
Actually, my dog's driving me nuts. He wants to go out. So if you remember, Artie Rappy was at our previous meeting talking about the South Street water main replacement, and Justin was here as well. And they were also talking about adding the stormwater BMPs, and we were trying to determine if that could go under their general permit or if they needed separate permitting for that. So Clay and I kind of did some research looking at the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaw. So the water main replacement within the roadway is an exempt activity, and that's pretty much how we've been treating it over time. As far as the stormwater BMPs that they're proposing, it doesn't seem as though it would fit under an exemption and would most likely require an RDA be filed for the commission to approve those. So I just wanted to update you on that, and I will let them know that we'll need to see an RDA.
You know, if they're replacing catch basins, right? These BMPs, basically they're putting in a improved.
Yeah, but they're also doing, it seemed like they were also talking about putting in dry wells and various other things.
Something larger than what
Than
is
just, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
if they
And
were just
outside the
replacing-
footprint of the roadway, which kind of triggers.
I think if they were just replacing something, even if it was outside the footprint, that would be exempt. But if what they're putting in is bigger, then it wouldn't be exempt. At least that's my reading.
Yeah, it very well could be. But in this case, I'm gonna let them know that they should file an RDA for that, even though it's all positive. We just need to permit it correctly. And then, oh, Clay is missing. We just wanted to bring up the MACC conference again. Paulina, I know that you signed up and you, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think I gave your email addresses out to Joey, and I guess he sent you the invoice already, so.
We did get the invoice. Clay had mentioned that he had tried signing up yesterday, and he was wondering if you ended up emailing your, oh, there's Clay. We're talking about the MACC.
When I was signing up, it says if you are going to be reimbursed by the town, contact them directly. And I have, I'm part of the MACC, one of their committees. And so I just emailed Joey and he said he could help me. So he was the one where I just sent what I'm signing up for, and he's provided the invoice. So you have to do that extra step of contacting them.
And directly going through them for your
Yep.
I don't, is anyone else planning on signing up and going, or? No, okay. So it may just be Clay and myself that have to contact them.
I'll see you there then.
Yeah. Sounds good. Maybe we'll see you for lunch at the bottom of that. Have you been there before?
I have at the Holy
Ugh,
Cross. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually bitter cold and you stand in line outside for a while.
It really is. Yeah. And then headed back up that steep hill when after lunch. I've taken the shuttle, I'll admit it.
Didn't know that was an option.
Oh yes, that's an option. I didn't have anything else. Did you, Clay?
Nope.
Okay, so I'm remote, so probably Tuesday I'll have the signature sheet out for for this order, so I'll send you a reminder to stop by.
All right, great. All right, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Just quick question, on the enforcement action, I don't think we voted on, do we need to vote on anything for that, or is that just something you can do without us voting?
So usually
For, like,
I
drive.
put it together and then at the next meeting, you guys vote to ratify it.
Got it,
So
Okay.
that's
I'll set that.
okay.
All right, motion to adjourn.
9:02. Let's get out of here.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, everybody raise their hand. All right,
Bye-bye, everyone.
all right, thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
Night.